Harwich Conservation Commission, Wednesday, June 7th. The first item is a presentation by Michael Locke, Harwich Conservation Trust. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission and staff. I'm here before you this evening to seek your approval of a proposed land management plan for the approximately 17.34 acre Muddy Creek Headwaters site, formerly owned by the Marini Nominee Trust. The land was acquired on March 2nd of this year, a compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trusts on behalf of Harwich Conservation Trusts to allow the town the time it needs to fulfill the state grant compliance requirements relative to a state local acquisitions for natural diversity or land grant that the town was approved for regarding this site. Part of the grant compliance requirements includes approval of a land management plan by the selectman, town administrator, the conservation administrator, and the members of your commission. The town selectmen have already reviewed this land management plan and have approved it. And so now I'm seeking your approval, and I'm willing to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, Nikki, do you have any comments to make?
No, I don't.
Okay. Carolyn?
No questions.
Rob?
It's a pretty rough crowd. You ready? Not on the questions.
Ernie?
Yeah, a couple of questions, Mike. On page 6 of the presentation that you sent in, it mentions it preserves the land within a town-designated unique area. What is a unique area? It's like the 5th bullet from the bottom or so.
That, I believe, refers to the environmental sensitivity of that particular site in that corner of the Pleasant Bay watershed. I'd have to look at the open space recreation plan of the town to comment further. But that's essentially the enumeration of those different conservation criteria, and the preservation of this property and how it meets those criteria refers back to the town's open space and rec plan, as well as the Cape Cod Commission regional policy plan and the statewide recreation plan drafted in 2012. So that's the best answer I can give you right now.
Okay, I just didn't want to know if we were approving something that was unique to us too, that we couldn't administer or oversee.
Oh, it's
properly.
it's relative to conservation value.
It is, all right. And then on the page 7, it lists the permitted activities and the prohibited activities. I was a little surprised that non-motorized watercraft was not a permitted activity. You know, canoes, kayaks, that sort of thing.
Sure, I can elaborate on that. There have been questions asked about the possibility of this property providing overland access to the shoreline for non-motorized watercraft launching, canoes, kayaks. But we've determined, because of the distance from Church Street, where this property has frontage, from the distance to Church Street to the shoreline and the heavily vegetated wetland buffer along the shoreline, coupled with the fact that because of the new bridge at Route 28, where Muddy Creek flows into Jackknife Cove, and the ample parking at the Jackknife Cove Beach, that there really isn't a need for placing a launch area for watercraft. It also would create a long-term land management challenge for us. Ultimately, the title of the property is going to transfer to Harwich Conservation Trust. Right now, it's held by the compact on our behalf, again, to allow the town to fulfill its state grant compliance requirements.
Okay.
And the conservation restriction will be held by the town as an overlay protection.
Okay. And then under the prohibited activities, you didn't note the collection of plants, animals, soil, and rocks. So it implies to me that someone can come in there and dig up plants and take them home with them.
That is not the case, but we haven't checked that box because we are also going to apply our own list of prohibited and permitted activities on this property, which are much more detailed than the state grant selection here.
I
These
see.
are general guidelines.
That's fair enough,
And,
yeah.
and so if we encounter an occasion where we have a specific need for perhaps maybe reintroducing a state-listed rehabbed rare species, maybe in conjunction with wildcare that might have been rescued in the neighborhood, then we might reintroduce it, and if there's a need to retrieve it again and give it more care, then we wouldn't want to, that's just an example, we wouldn't want to step on our own toes. But
Good questions, Ernie.
yeah, it is a good question.
And then the other one, on page 8, it talks about an encroachment issue from neighbors. Anything we need to be concerned about there?
No, we fortunately have been working with a set of very dedicated Harwich Conservation Trust volunteers who together work in a group we call Boundary Quest, and their main objective is to identify, map, and mark property corners and lines. And so what we're striving to do when we work on acquiring these different landscapes, especially landscapes of a larger area like this one, is to really out of the gate at the beginning of the land management process, understand where those corners and lines are. So they did an excellent job in end of March through April before the leaves really came out in May. And so we were able to identify some areas of limited encroachment, and we've already been working with those neighbors.
Leaf dumping, that sort of thing, perhaps?
Yeah, yes. A little bit of clearing over the line, all fairly benign as far as encroachment goes.
Okay.
But we wanted to be clear that we've found it and we're addressing it.
Yeah, good, because I noticed in the next paragraph it said that the Conservation Commission will address any encroachment issues. So I didn't want to get tied into something that we were taking on more than we could justify. Okay, those are the only questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got any questions?
No, as usual, self-explanatory and excellent. Thank you.
Okay, Brad?
The one question, just followed up on Ernie questions on page 7. Fishing is listed as prohibited activity. I'm curious why. I don't really support that notion, so I'd like to hear why it's prohibited.
Sure. Again, the shoreline is fairly thickly vegetated, whether it's the wetland buffer or the upland buffer beyond. So we don't envision an access point to the shoreline at the moment. If we did that and did allow fishing, for instance, it could become a land management challenge for us. And we feel that, again, because of the access afforded by the new bridge at Route 28, Jackknife Cove, and the ample parking, that there's plenty of opportunity for folks to take a canoe or kayak under the bridge and head up into those reaches of the river. So that's the way we've been looking at it.
I guess my view is there's plenty of people that don't have a canoe or a kayak, and it's a very traditional cultural experience to go shore fishing in the town of Harwich. So it was 17 acres. It seems there should be some accommodation for shore fishing. So that's a concern I have. So the future of this, the plan will be turned over to the Conservation Commission to manage?
No. The steps include the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust transferring a conservation restriction to the town per Article 38 of the annual town meeting warrant, May 1st, 2016. And then after the town completes its state land grant compliance requirements, fee simple title will transfer from the Compact to Harwich Conservation Trust. That was the structure that was envisioned for this acquisition process. the conservation restriction runs with the land.
Right.
So the conservation restriction is still in force over the Harwich Conservation Trust.
So let me ask you this, Mike, because town funds went to purchasing this property, I would feel strongly that the activity of fishing should be allowed on a property of this size, abutting that type of water body. Is that a possible change that you would accommodate?
I can't speak for the Land Stewardship Committee right now. That's the group of trustees and non-trustee volunteers that work together to develop the management guidelines for each property. So that's not an answer I can give you right now.
Okay.
I have one question on this too.
Carol?
As I'm reading on page 7 also, it looks to me like swimming is not permitted and it's not prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
It's just an item that we didn't check off. I mean, we can certainly check that item off as a prohibited activity. That,
It would
The-
be prohibited?
well, the backing up from that question, there's no practical access for swimming, and the water itself isn't really conducive to swimming. I mean, there's no practical access for fishing either because of the vegetated shoreline. So just because of the nature of the property and the abutting water body, it's just not practical. So it's a non-issue in my
Well,
mind.
So, Michael, the town is purchasing this, and,
The town is purchasing a conservation restriction over the property.
yeah. So we're trying to create recreational opportunities on this land as
Passive
well.
recreational opportunities.
Yeah. It seems like some of the issues that we brought up tonight would fall into that. So what are the options of amending this document to allow those sort of activities? I mean, it seems like for the betterment of the town and the use of this land by its citizens and all that sort of a thing, that these are, I think, good issues that should be addressed.
I think that if it's helpful to you as a measure to answer your point, Ernie, and your concern, Brad, we could strike the fishing prohibited activity on this document, but that doesn't preclude Harwich Conservation Trust as owner eventually from establishing a set of rules that may or may not allow it.
Right, but at least it leaves the door open.
Yeah,
That it could be permitted.
that's, I
then.
think, a reasonable compromise given the timing around the compliance requirements.
Yeah.
Would you like to make a motion that we make exceptions for fishing and swimming?
I don't think swimming would necessarily fit here, but
Okay. Yes,
I
John?
have a question. This land is being obtained from whom? What's the name of the family?
so
It's
by
privately owned now,
way of background,
yeah?
Harwich Conservation Trust began working with the Marini family back in 2004 in an effort to preserve the 17 acres.
Otherwise, it was going to be developed.
Yes, it was a permitted 12-lot subdivision and had been for several years. So we at Harwich Conservation Trust had been in dialogue with them on and off since 2004. And as the real estate market really began to recover from the Great Recession, circa 2012, 2013, we'll say, and then really more so into 2014, 2015, we began to talk more regularly with the Marini family. And just last year, in July of 2016, we were able to sign a purchase and sale agreement with the Marini family. The entity that owned the property at the time was called the Marini Nominee Trust. In order to bring enough funding into the purchase structure, we began working with the Town Real Estate and Open Space Committee to ask for their consideration of making a recommendation to the Selectmen and then to the Community Preservation Committee for funding from the Community Preservation Act fund of the town for the town to purchase a conservation restriction on the property. So for the town's investment, they actually will receive a legal interest on the property and overlay protection. Meanwhile, the trust set out to raise the lion's share of the funding needed to acquire this property, and did so through a series of grants as well as private donations. In order to give the town the time to apply for and then comply with the land grant requirements, the trust engaged the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust. That's another nonprofit. It's a regional land trust service center that provides technical assistance to the land trust in each of the Cape's 15 towns. I also work for that organization. So the Compact then pre-acquired or engaged in a buy and hold transfer with the Marini Nominee Trust. So that's because the Marini Nominee Trust wanted to close earlier than the town was able to, and the trust, HCT, was able to. So the Compact acquired the property on HCT's behalf on March 2nd of this year. And before conveying fee simple title to Harwich Conservation Trust, will first convey a conservation restriction to the town.
The intent of the question I asked was, when it was under private ownership or ownership by the trust, the family before, did they allow for people to access the waters for?
No.
No.
It was private property.
It was private property. So we're not taking away anything from people. We're maintaining it as it has been. It is basically a fragile piece of property. The lands at the water's edge. If people want to go swimming, they should continue to go swimming at the there's a public area at the far end, and that's allowable swimming. It's safeguarded swimming. There's
Yes.
parking for people. There is nothing up here. So once you allow, now you're creating something new by allowing people, if you were to change it, allowing people to go in, and you would have to provide safeguards for people to use that area. You are now responsible for people who make access, and I consider them benign activities, swimming, fishing. However, there are other opportunities that would not create paths and walking areas over this fragile area. I don't think it should be, I think the purpose of the land is, the purpose of this accumulation, the acquirement of this land is to keep it as safe and, I don't want to use the word pristine, but
Natural.
natural as possible, and not to have people be using it as for swimming and fishing and other kinds of activities back and forth, and parking cars and all the other kinds of things that they would do. I think the 17 acres ought to be left alone just as it is.
In the effort to bring back as natural a setting as possible, Harwich Conservation Trust also worked with local contractors to remove an abandoned and deteriorated, open to the weather, two-family structure. We worked with Robert B. Auer Company and a subcontractor, Banner Environmental, to abate the asbestos that was in the building. And also, during our due diligence, we found two 200-gallon-plus home heating oil tanks, one of which was exterior and had been leaking, unbeknownst to the prior owner. Fortunately, we were also working with a licensed site professional. We contracted through Horsley Witten Group and placed groundwater monitoring wells around the site of the leaking tank, and established that the depth of home heating oil leak extended to about 15 feet. Fortunately, groundwater was at 22 feet. So we were able to contain that and remove about 124 tons of soil, which was then recycled and Stoughton at Aggregate Industries into asphalt. So I add this by way of expanding on your point, John, that we've beyond the purchase price and raising the funds for that, we have endeavored through our eco-restoration activities, which I just outlined, to bring back as natural a setting as possible. We're now working with Blue Flax Design and Eco-Restoration Firm to reestablish meadow on the disturbed areas. We won't be opening it for walking trail access for probably another year, year and a half, until the meadow grass is established. So that's more detail.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I would move that we approve the land management plan for the Muddy Creek Headwaters site with the proviso that consideration be given to elimination of the prohibition against fishing on that land.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, make a comment.
Page 22, how to amend this document. It does say property acquired with land grant funding may not be used for active recreation. What is the difference between active and passive recreation, and are we getting into a gray area here with our reservation?
Passive recreation is typically defined as an activity that has minimal impact on the land, something of quiet enjoyment, walking trails, photography, bird watching, not hardscape active recreational activities that might involve ball fields, things of that nature. I'm giving you a general overview of the difference.
So swimming would and kayaking would still be passive.
I'm not sure.
Fishing?
I would have to look at the state's definition of active versus passive. I'm just giving you an overview.
And
Is there shellfishing in there?
It used to be too salty, now it's probably salty enough to allow shellfishing. That would not be jurisdictional to the trust. It would just be a case of would they allow access for people to get to where shellfish might be. And the same with fishing. It wouldn't be jurisdictional to you managing the activity of fishing. You would just allow people to have access and say it was improved activity or not.
If we could get access to the shoreline, which
Right.
now we cannot.
Right. The shoreline would still be considered state waters, and if there was the ability for somebody to walk in from a side property and fish would be a legal activity. So that's something to think about as well. I just think it's such a traditional activity for the region. And to have 1,400 feet of shoreline and all that area to just flat out prohibit the activity doesn't seem in, connection to the culture of this town. So that's my opinion.
Need a second to the motion to approve this with the exception to prevent fishing.
I'll second it.
Second, any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Opposed.
Got one opposed, anyone abstain? Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1. One opposed, thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. When could I pick up the signed
Check the-
page? Tomorrow or?
Tonight,
Okay.
And Patty will get it ready for you a couple hours after we open, we'll say.
Great.
All right.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Your explanation was very clear. I had followed this in the papers, and it was confusing in the papers.
It's a complex project, and I appreciate your commission's help in making this preservation project possible.
I'd like to
Yeah.
compliment the board's questions.
Yes. Also, I agree with that.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Makes us think more closely about these projects going forward.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for your efforts on this.
The next hearing is request for termination of equitability, Moran Engineering Associates, Richard Judd, 15 Carefree Way. Proposed project is a Title V septic system work. The septic upgrade project is proposed to replace an existing failed system. The existing system is to be pumped and removed. There are no additions or alterations proposed to the dwelling. You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Rick Judd. Our client, Barry Bissett, is marketing his house for sale. The system was thought not to pass. I have received, dated May 31, 2017, a septic inspection report that deems this as a passed septic system that's currently in the ground by a third party, not by our company. For the sake of not having a response from the health department as to if it did pass or did not pass, they review all septic inspection reports and issue a finding. I've been instructed to move forward and still present tonight. So I will present the proposed upgrade of the Title V system in case it does not, in fact, pass. The existing two-bedroom home has no proposed additions or changes to the existing. Under the current requirements, we cannot make the 100 feet from the freshwater body. We're looking for a 27-foot variance from the Board of Health. Relative to the Board of Health's requirements, although we could do this by gravity, we will have to do a system under pressure distribution. So what we've done is, in the plan you have before you, we've used a combination septic tank and pump chamber at the northwest portion of the property to be held 5 feet off the property line. And then the soil absorption system, it's a two-bedroom home, so it's a small soil absorption system that will be under pressure distribution. We're maintaining 75 feet from the edge of wetland bank. I don't think we would pick up much more than a foot to 2 feet, so that's a conservative approach. We have greater than 5-foot separation to groundwater below it. During the construction phase, we show a silt fence, straw wattle, erosion control. The existing turf area would be reestablished. The existing stone driveway would be reestablished. And there is an existing brick walkway going from the stone drive to the front steps of the house. That would be reestablished. Again, there's no increase in flow, no change to the home.
Okay, any comments, Nikki?
Just that the whole property is in the buffer zone, so there's no way to get the septic out of the buffer zone. And that it's already in disturbed area, it's going where the current system already is.
Thank you. Carol, any questions?
No, I don't see you've got much choice.
Bob? Nope. Ernie?
No comments. No.
John?
No, nothing.
Brad?
No thanks.
Any comments, Brad?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed project, Title V septic system at 15 Carefree Way with a negative determination 3 and 6. Work take place within the buffer zone and in an area subject to protection under the Act and bylaws, but will not have a negative impact on the wetland resource area.
Need a second?
Second.
A second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
The next determination of applicability, Ernest Crabtree, 176 Great Western Road. Add a second-story living area above an existing garage at 176 Great Western Road. No expansion of existing footprint. Install sewer line from garage to existing septic tank. All work will be done outside the 50-foot buffer zone. Ernie?
The plan that you have in your package shows the garage that currently exists on the site. It's a 2.5 car-sized garage, which we're proposing to add a second story to, and also add a bathroom, washer and dryer, and that sort of thing up there. All of the utilities are presently already provided to the garage, including gas and electric. So we will need to add, the water line runs directly by it, so that would be tapped into. The biggest issue, of course, is the providing a sewer line. So what's proposed is that the sewer line run through the existing driveway and across a short section of lawn to the existing septic tank, which is down closer to the house, still outside of the 50-foot buffer zone, however. and then backfill, restore the land to its original state.
Thank you, Ernie. Nikki?
Nothing, just that it's, not really much disturbance to the ground. As long as their staging is from the driveway of all materials, I don't see a problem with it.
Thank you. Carolyn?
No,
Rob?
no questions.
I'd like to see you put in a tiki bar instead of the garage, but no more questions.
That'll be down on the dock.
John?
No, this is clear cut.
Brad?
Nope.
Okay. Have a motion?
I move we accept the request for determination of applicability for 176 Great Western Road with a negative determination, numbers 3 and 6.
Okay, need a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor of this motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Motion, thank you. Ernie?
Thanks very much.
Okay. Next item is request for termination of applicability. Eldridge Surveying and Engineering, 43 Saquatucket Bluffs. Replace and extend the existing pool fence. The extension is proposed just outside of 50 feet from the top of the coastal bank within existing lawn and landscaping areas. The proposal does not require the removal of any trees and result in less day-to-day activity within the no disturb zone. You're on.
Good evening. For the record, Thad Eldridge, Eldridge Surveying and Engineering. Like I said, the young lady who came in was announcing that Paula McGuire was not present tonight. She went to the hospital for something minor.
Okay.
From there, the Lambertuses purchased the property a year ago, and they immediately set to putting an addition on off the side of the building. They are looking at a number of different options, and they realize one of the problems they have here are gates. They enjoy sitting on the pool patio, but they don't like going through the gate to get to their back lawn. So they like to extend their living space out. The proposed fence will extend in front of the building in existing lawn, a little bit of existing landscape area. It will have gates in it for periodic access, but it really will cut down on access within the 50-foot zone. And if there are any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them.
Okay, Nikki, you're on.
I believe Amy contacted you about moving the east corner. It kind of, one of the stakes is basically in the middle of some vegetation and moving it more towards the house so that it would stay in the lawn area,
And we could certainly slide that in.
just so no vegetation needs to be uprooted or disturbed
Sure.
right there.
Okay.
Okay, thank Carolyn.
No questions. I
Well-
think that's an important consideration. That does change the configuration of the fence, though.
It does.
Rob?
No, I just a question, would you just explain to me, the proposal does not require the removal of any trees. Clearly, it will result in less day-to-day activity within the,
The problem is gates. They're not going through the gates, so if we have a fence between where they're enjoying their outdoor activities and the existing lawn that they have that goes into the 50-foot, they're not going to be using that as much.
All right, well, okay, that explains it, I just don't see how.
They're starting to sequester themselves away from the top of the coastal bank.
I see, okay.
They were here last year with Genic Design. There were some trees that had died on the coastal bank. There was some erosion out there, and they started shoring that up, and they realized pretty quickly how fragile that is and how important it is to protect that and the buffer. So they're starting to make an attempt to withdraw their activities further from the top of that bank.
Ernie, any questions? Rob? Oh, Ernie?
I'm gonna pass and come
Okay.
back to me.
Yeah, one of the things that we've traditionally looked for is, when it comes to installation of fences, that they not be installed directly on the 50-foot buffer line, that it be a setback. Your thoughts on that?
We were just behind the 50-foot line with this, about 51 feet from the top of the bank, and we're an existing lawn.
Okay.
And we're really taking an activity that lawn extends well into the 50-foot zone.
Yes, and we noticed that when we were out there, that it's sort of unbroken.
Yes, and now we're breaking it.
Yeah. and I guess I don't necessarily follow your logic that putting up a fence will keep people outside of the buffer? Because they won't go beyond the fence, is that the
They
theory?
enjoy their time inside the fence. They have a couple of dogs that they enjoy playing with within their yard area. They want to keep those dogs contained, and they want to stay on one side.
Okay. Will the fence extend up the side? I assume it will.
Because it's also a pool fence, it does have to connect back to the building.
I see, okay, all right.
And that's one they were looking at about 12 feet off the building and coming over. And I'd assume that's what Nicole was talking about with the pulling it back in the southeast corner. We can come closer to straight off the building.
All right, that's fine, I have no other questions.
Anything else, John? Anything else, John?
I'm sorry?
All right, any questions?
No, no, I don't.
Brad?
Yeah, just further on the idea of pulling that fence off the 50-foot line. It looks like you have patio that comes right to the line, so you want that fence needs to be along the edge of that patio, I imagine. But as you head to the west, it looks like you would have room to move that off the line, say by 5 feet. Is
To
that
the
possible?
east, west or east?
We'll go with east or west.
Yeah.
Towards the Cliff Drive or?
Toward to Cliff Drive,
Okay.
which is to the west, right?
West,
It
yeah.
is.
So that's something I would be interested in seeing, just because that would allow that top of the bank, that first few feet, to revegetate and to be restored somewhat from lawn. So that to me would be better than just saying that it would reduce activity. You would regain some habitat at that location. So I can't imagine that, they would want to pull that fence off the patio edge. That doesn't seem to be reasonable to ask. But how about in that western corner? I didn't make it to the site. I guess I've been there before, but I guess there's a patch of vegetation there. What do you gain when you pull the fence off of that?
No, that would be fine. We can certainly pull that back.
Is that 5 feet, or how much is it if you were to pull the fence off of that patch of vegetation?
Oh, what would you say?
Oh, on the
That's where it's-
vegetation's on the east side
Oh, it
that we
is.
were talking about.
Okay, different spot.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
that's okay.
But can the entire fence be pulled in 5 feet? Except for the patio area, which was actually Amy's recommendation.
I've been authorized to pull it in from the east. Pulling it away from the line, they can give a foot or two, but this is really the yard that they want to enjoy.
So on the east, you can pull it in 5 feet.
I can pull it in from the east to the building corner.
Yeah, I might wanna,
I can pull
Oh,
this edge.
oh, you mean the okay.
So pulling this over is fine. They're willing to go to 52 or 53 feet from the bank.
But not 55.
They are looking at a rather small backyard when they come down to it. They're again trying to sequester their activities to a more reasonable location.
I think we've been comfortable in the past with a 3-foot setback on some
Okay.
fences that we've
Just-
had.
Looking at Amy's notes.
Our bylaw allows us to impose up to a 10-foot.
Yeah.
If there's a potential impact to a resource. In this case, it seems to be more of a, just negotiation to see what would work.
And ultimately, this is bettering the impact of the resource.
I think it probably does in terms of activity, but the fence coming back 5 feet would establish that square footage of improved habitat, because it would revegetate. So I think that's our interest here. So, looking to pull it back 5 feet the whole distance,
What are they gonna do with that lawn area, just abandon it?
I don't know if that's appropriate, because then you'd have
This
it
is all lawn.
jog back out again where the patio
Right
is,
around here. That's kind of
Yeah,
square.
we'd want something more continuous
right?
through this. So, I mean, it would be at the 50-foot mark at the patio.
Could they pull it back 5 feet from the patio heading east?
if we averaged out, if we held it at the 50 feet at the patio and we came back 5 feet in the southeastern corner, then we'd average out at 52 and a half feet. Would that work for the commission?
We'll have to vote.
I think it's reasonable, just because around the pool and the patio, I don't see them gain that 5 feet without pinching the pool by the fence. The fence would be right on top of the pool, and you can't put the fence on the I mean, I wish we didn't allow the patio to be that close. That was something that happened at some point in time.
Years ago.
But I think that would be a reasonable approach, is to gain that little bit of area going 5 feet in east of the patio.
I think. Okay, Brad?
Do we have the original permission for the patio and all that stuff?
I don't have that with me.
I think it was '05, if I recall.
Okay, Rob, you're on.
I'd be curious to see the original plan myself.
Were you around in '05, Walter?
Excuse me?
Were you here in 2005?
I don't think so, no, I don't think so.
Well, it must have a certificate of compliance to a sold, so
Right.
the commission probably signed off on it at some point.
And we had completed an as-built for it at the time that was submitted to the commission. I mean, this is what was approved at the time.
Right.
Questions?
No questions, okay. Yes,
Just
John,
one-
go ahead.
What kind of a fence is this? Is this chain link or a
No,
board?
they're gonna keep it a pool-type fence. It's gonna have the 4-foot spacing in it. They wanna go with something that's a little more subtle than the current fence. The current has some 3/4-inch bars in it, and it's very, very noticeable. So they're going with something that's very thin, but it still has to have that 4-inch separation to meet the pool code,
And the height of that would be
4 feet.
4 feet,
That's by code
and-
as well.
but basically you can see through it,
They're doing their best to make it as transparent as possible.
doing the best.
We talked the idea of putting in a plexiglass or something, but that requires so much cleaning that it never works out as well. So they found a very, very discreet, almost wire that will serve the purposes of the pool fence and help enhance their view through their yard. Maintain their view.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Well, it's an RDA request. And so I guess I would move to approve the request for 43 Saquotucket Bluffs under negative determination. I think 3 and 6 would apply.
Yes, 3 and 6.
Yep. And with the condition that the fence will be pulled off the 50-foot no disturb line for 5 feet extending from the patio to the eastern border.
How about attaching it to the house, moving it in those 5 feet on the east side? I don't think that makes too much difference to us, though.
You mean on the eastern edge that goes up towards the house?
Yeah.
Well, see, our bylaw allows us to protect or establish a vegetative buffer strip along the 50-foot line, up to 10 feet. And so I think that's what we're trying to do here. If you come away from that 50-foot line, I don't know, we would have to have a resource we're trying to protect along there, I think.
It will be vegetated, that if the 5-foot will.
Right. It become vegetated. And we have a bylaw that allows us to do that.
With existing lawn on the other side of
So
it.
do we have to specify the vegetation?
Yeah, we
This is
can
natural veg-
seek to
natural
improve that
vegetation.
site.
Be a mitigation plan?
So we're
That
trying
way.
to cut that corner
I mean,
off
I'd be
by
more
going straight
inclined,
down, so
we
the
have
fence
lawn that
doesn't go
extends
into that.
right to the top of the
natural
coastal bank
vegetated
that's been
area.
that way for,
That would be ideal.
and I'd be more inclined to
wanna make
vegetate
sure.
something along the top of the coastal bank rather than 50 feet behind.
Do you want to point out what you, in case I'm not understanding?
These,
Been better
if we had left the existing lawn on, but the existing lawn comes down to the top of the coastal bank. So I would be more inclined to vegetate something on the top of the coastal bank rather than vegetating something along the 50-foot line.
So you're gonna cut off the lawn right now. It's a viable green lawn,
It is a viable green lawn.
right? And they're gonna put a fence there.
Gonna put a fence there with a gate.
And they have no,
Okay.
they're not, once that fence is up, they're not gonna
Right, but Amy
go on
was
the other
talking about
side ever
vegetative
again?
buffer strip the whole way.
They still have the means to access that. Just know that the bulk of their activities will be sequestered to within the fence.
So it's not like they're abandoning that land, they're just
Not
putting up a
abandoning
fence.
it, no. But they do realize that when they're out there, they're gonna spend more time on one side of the fence and less time on the other. Now they go haphazardly everywhere. So they're within the 50-foot, they're outside of the 50-foot, and it's just lawn.
Need a second,
Well, I think I need to modify
okay,
my condition,
okay.
because I think I didn't understand what Amy suggested. So it's really just that corner, extending the fence off that corner. So, let that motion die without a second. Nobody seconded it, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Then I would suggest someone who understands the site plan better than I do, make the motion with that condition for the fence coming off that corner.
I think where we're going is presently your southeastern stake is in the middle of a naturally vegetated area, inside of a tree and everything else. Our request is that be moved, the fence be moved out of that naturally vegetated area so that it is only in the existing lawn area.
And what about the landscaped area that's there? Because the naturally vegetated area butts up to a landscaped area.
Where? Show me on the
Where?
thing here. I don't remember seeing
We
There are a
that.
number of hydrangeas that are planted right in here.
Yeah, but that's not inside the fence. That's not impacted by the fence, right? So your southeast corner, right there, is inside of a naturally vegetated area. If you bring the fence, perfect, that will address it then, right?
Sounds good to me.
And
Okay.
how about 5 feet off
Hey,
the
Nikki, can you
buffer
dig this
line,
plan up?
off the
The original
50-foot
Oh, are you
line?
concerned about that?
Yes. How about 5 feet off the line?
I mean, that's what Amy suggested, but hearing, your observations from being on the site, if it's all green lawn on the other side of it,
It would be green lawn on the
it's
other
not gonna be
side.
restored to any state that we're looking to get, so I think a vegetative buffer strip doesn't apply in this
Okay.
situation. What's the dimension? Just pull it to be perpendicular to the corner of the house and draw, okay,
So make a motion that we approve the proposal to extend the existing pool fence at 43 Saquatucket Bluffs with the provision that the eastern boundary of the fence be brought inside of the current natural vegetated area.
Outside?
That makes sense.
Inside or
Inside
west of the current naturally vegetated area.
Second.
A second, any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, anyone abstain? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you much.
Thanks, Thad.
Have a good evening.
Patty, on the previous motion, there was one abstention. Did you get one abstention on the previous motion? The Crabtree motion?
Yeah, Ernie, I do abstain.
Good, good, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay,
No tiki bar.
the next item is Agricultural Research Corporation, 11 Harbor Way. Proposed installation of a land-based upweller operation within existing building.
They have asked to continue without any testimony because they are working on a notice of intent, and it makes sense to do both of them together at the next hearing.
I need a motion to continue this at the next hearing, I think, on June
June 21st.
21st.
I make a motion to grant a continuance to Aquaculture Research Corporation until June 21st meeting.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Next one is Jeffrey King, 30 Lothrop Avenue. Installation of an underground electrical utility line within the existing general gravel driveway on Sears Road to provide service to existing house and cottage at 30 Lothrop Avenue. The existing gravel driveway is located within the 100-foot buffer zone of a BVW, and some of the driveway is located in the 50-foot buffer zone. Yes, sir, you're on. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Paul Shea. I'm with Independent Environmental Consultants, and I'm representing Mr. King tonight. This RDA application, this is a site that I think a lot of the commission members are familiar with. It has a lot of wetlands. What we've basically done is flag the wetlands starting at Lothrop Lane, and they sort of wrap around the existing house and cottage which are at the property. The red line is the 50-foot buffer zone off the edge of wetlands.
Where is Lothrop Road?
The Lothrop Road is right here.
Okay,
This is the beginning of his stone driveway.
okay.
It's an existing pervious stone driveway which comes into the property right here. It's got a circle area here, existing houses here, and there's an existing cottage right here. What he's proposing to do is within the stone driveway to put in an underground electric line as opposed to the overhead power line that's there now. So all the work is going to be a trench within the existing stone driveway to put the electric line underground. It is in sections of the 50-foot buffer zone and sections of the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone. I reviewed the project with Amy, and she suggested we file an RDA for it. Again, there's no trees or shrubs being altered. It's just within the driveway itself. It's pretty
Okay.
straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Nikki?
The only thing is that the RDA also asks to approve the wetland delineation. So while the utility line is fine, this delineation is different than the one we received from Lynn Hamlin, I think last year. And Amy didn't receive any wetland delineation paperwork as to why the delineation changed. So she wanted to make it clear that if you approve the gas line or the utility lines, that you do not approve the delineation until she gets some reasoning on why the two site plans differ in delineation, and she can go out there.
Yeah, I actually took over the project from Lynn, and my flags, for the most part, completely agreed with what Lynn had. Maybe one right in this area is, there was a stake there, but in my opinion, the wetland was like a couple of feet away, but on reading your reports, for the project, the cottage, that the wetland was approximately 9 feet away. That's exactly where we're showing it. So I can talk with Amy about it, but the wetland,
Just
it
because
was-
of what's currently going on the property,
Yep.
changing the wetland delineation kind of can be an issue. So she didn't say not to approve the utility lines per se, but just to make sure we note that we are not saying that this is a correct delineation at this point.
Okay, that's fine.
Carolyn, any questions?
So as we make a motion, do we include the fact that our decision is based on Lynn Hammond's wetlands delineation?
Well, you would,
No,
No,
You
we
could
don't have
use-
to comment on that.
we don't have
Right.
to
Well, we
comment.
we're not deciding the wetland delineation at all.
Don't decide, our decision to approve this on his diagram doesn't assume an approval of that.
That's correct. We're
Correct.
only,
there's an option that says that. So normally, as usual, you do the -3 and -6, but then there's also a positive 2B that the boundaries are not confirmed by this determination, but that the
Okay.
work is still allowed.
Okay,
thank you.
-3 and 6 and positive.
I have it written here.
And I'm assuming it would be
How's it-
a -2 and a -3, because we're working obviously in the 100-foot buffer zone of the BVW, but there's also a floodplain out here,
Oh, okay.
so you'd have to make it -2 and -3.
Thank you. Okay.
And then -6 for our
My
bylaw.
other question is, can you put underground electrical utilities safely in a flood zone? What happens when it floods?
They can get their, I mean, underground utilities are in flood zones in every town,
They're
all over
waterproof.
the place,
They're
yeah.
waterproof?
Yeah.
Okay,
They usually put them in like a sleeve.
okay, make sure it's waterproof.
We can specify that.
Watertight.
You'd know quick if it wasn't.
Rob, any
That's
questions?
probably true.
No, I think it's a good project.
Okay. Ernie?
No questions on the utilities themselves, but there, I noticed on your plan, you have a proposed propane tank?
That has actually been already approved through an administrative.
Oh, it was, okay.
Basically what we have is, that I've got a notice of intent on at the, I believe I'm at the end of the hearing tonight for Mr. King. This, Amy just, when I first talked to her about the propane tank, she said because of the, she's been out there, we're on this side of the driveway, away from the wetlands. She said, I'll allow this to come through as an administrative review application, which we submitted back in April, and it got approved. And then we're just doing the underground utility line as the RDA, and then I'll get into the cottage issue at the end of the night with an after-the-fact notice of intent application.
Okay. No, I have no comments then.
John?
Just a question.
Sure.
The driveway as it exists that goes, from the road up to the house,
Mhm.
I'm interested in a section that spills over onto the 50, within the 50-foot. What, is that gravel at that point?
It is gravel right
Okay,
there.
and when you put, if you were to dig it up to lay this utility underground, what do you put on top of the area that's the utility line? Is that also gravel?
Well, what they'll do is, they're gonna dig a trench
Yeah,
to put the utility line down,
right?
and then they backfill it with the
Oh.
same material. So literally, when they backfill it, you're not even gonna know this job is done. So the material in this section right here, in the existing stone driveway, is gonna look exactly the same.
Okay, so,
Same material gets put back.
so what you see now is what you should see after you're through,
Exactly, you'll never know that they dug the trench if they
Okay.
do it right.
if they do it right, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Brad.
One question,
Mhm.
on the wetland side where the existing pole is, what do you have for, sediment, removal or just keeping material from getting into the wetland at that end? Do you have any plans for, sequestering activity from digging up that area?
I think it's, if I recall, there's a telephone pole right here.
Right.
And that's where I believe that they stopped the digging in this little section coming towards the wetland. This is pretty much a disturbed berm area
Mhm.
next to the driveway.
Yep.
So there's very little material within that area to get disturbed.
That's what I'm wondering
And
about.
then at this point, it's a 1-inch 20, we're probably talking about 15 feet
Mhm.
coming in, but it's
Right.
pretty much disturbed now because it was a berm that was created when they built the driveway,
Right. I'm not worried about the driveway itself, just that little stretch there.
right?
How long will
And-
the activity take? How many days?
Oh, this should take a day, less than a day.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, typically, they're probably gonna dig a trench 18 inches wide. They'll drop it down, I don't know,
Mhm.
maybe a foot and a half, and then backfill it all in the same day. Typically, what I tell the applicant or the contractor is like, make sure you pick a good day. You don't wanna pick a day when, storm's coming in the middle of the day and we end up with a mess out here. A little common sense.
Would you like a motion on this one?
Yes, we need a motion.
Okay, I move that we approve the request for determination of applicability for 30 Lockwith Avenue to install underground electric utility line in the existing gravel driveway with a negative determination 2, 3, and 6. And a positive 2,
Positive 2B,
2B.
yes.
Can you need a second?
I'll second.
A second, any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. The next item is a notice of intent for Snow Inn Road, Demetrius Desco, Wishmere Shares Condo, proposed patio extension and outdoor kitchen, replacement of brick patio and cut stone patio, and mitigation planning. This work will take place in the 50-foot buffer zone to the top of the coastal bank and in the flood zone. Continued from May 17th. Yes, you're on.
Hi, good evening. I'm Stephanie Sequin with Router and Wilcox, representing Dimitri Dasco, who's the owner of this unit on Snow Inn Road in the Witchmere Shores condominium. And 3 weeks ago, we did discuss this. The proposal is to extend an existing brick patio next to the building and construct an outdoor kitchen, 3-foot by 16-foot structure. You had some concerns about the proximity to various resource areas because we are entirely within the 50-foot buffer. We are also within land subject to coastal storm flowage. So I've submitted a revised site plan. We've reduced the expansion of the patio. We've pulled that in closer to the existing patio, so our increase has become smaller, and we're also proposing to remove some additional existing patio that's in the southwest corner of the property, adjacent to the bulkhead / top of coastal bank. So as a summary, we are proposing an increase in red here of 136 square feet in hardscaping, and this is adjacent to the building within existing lawn area. We are removing patio here and 2 areas of patio here, which is adjacent to the resource area, and the square footage of patio that's coming out is 225 square feet. So we have a net reduction in hardscaping of 89 square feet. These areas where patio is coming out, 90 square feet, will be restored with native plantings, along with this existing lawn area that will be restored with native plantings, a mixture of tufted hair grass, switchgrass, and seaside goldenrod. So we're proposing a total of just over 500 square feet of mitigation plantings for a reduction in hardscaping. Nothing else has changed from our original proposal, other than the fact that we're reducing the hardscaping and bumped up the mitigation. If you look at simply the new hardscaping that we're proposing, the expanded patio and the kitchen is 136 square feet. We are providing, not even taking into account the patio that we're eliminating, but the 500 square feet of native plantings. That is a ratio of about 3.7 square feet of mitigation to 1 square foot of new hardscaping. So I think that's...
Thank you. Nikki, you're abstaining, right?
Yes.
Okay, Carol, any questions?
No.
Brad, Rob, well, you weren't here for the last meeting.
Nope.
Okay. Ernie?
When you came last time, Stephanie, one of the concerns that we had was the structure that's being constructed within the 50-foot buffer zone. And I mean, this is so I assume that you're not proposing any change to this?
No. I did speak with Mr. Dasco, who spoke with his designer, and as far as the height on that chimney, I guess, the counter is a 36-inch high, which is a typical dimension, and then the oven itself is needs to be roughly 2 feet, and then the chimney needs to be 2 feet above that. So there really isn't any
With 7 feet
7
tall.
feet on just that end section. The rest of it is 36 inches, which, for reference, I mean, if you, in this grass area is where we're talking about constructing this. So the 36 inches is, these windows, I would say, are about maybe 48 to 54 inches high. So it's, you know, lower than those windows and butted up against, I mean, if you look at this privet hedge, that's gonna be the backdrop for that structure. So it's not like that structure is going to be sitting out in the middle of a yard and be visible. It's going to be
Well, it will
visible,
be
but it's,
perpendicular to the structure itself, though,
right,
toward the channel.
yes.
The abutter's been notified and.
One other question for you, and as commentary that you know, our concern expressed at the last meeting was, you know, the visibility of this site as well. And I did hear from someone that they were going by it on a boat, and they noticed his grill that's out there right now, let alone this massive masterpiece that's proposed here. So it is viewed. It's a very visible site, and you know, I'm struggling with the idea of allowing a structure within the 50 in such a visible area. That being said, though, this is a 3-unit building, right?
3 units,
Yeah.
yes.
We had this similar problem with...
3-story.
Yeah, similar problem with one of the other condos at the far end of the development, where the pergola was put up. I'm assuming, but I need you to confirm as well, that Mr. Dasco, who lives in Unit 1, the bottom floor, has sole authority for all of the land around his unit, and that the 2 other unit owners have no say over what he does in that?
Correct. This is his exclusive use area.
Okay, all right.
On that other unit, some of the work, some of the mitigation plantings were taking place in the
Common area.
the residential exclusive use area,
Yeah.
the common.
Yeah,
use
we just
area.
need to be
Yeah.
certain that the request is being made by Dasco and that he has the authority to make that request.
He does,
That's-
yes.
That's all that I'm concerned about. All right, I have no other questions then.
John, you have any questions?
No, I remain the same as I did last week. The town's bylaw that's a safeguard for the 50 feet should be applied to everybody equally. And this construction, very well planned, very nice, is for his use, not for the community's use, is not a benefit for the community. I know it's an artificial the structure of the wall and the building when they allowed the building to be built within the 50 feet, but now we're talking about adding something new to this area, and I still, as much as if I were living there, I would like it myself, I would have to say that it is inappropriate to the town's bylaws concept. No, I'm sorry.
Hey, Brad?
No comments. Thanks.
Okay, do we have a, yes?
Can I just respond to your concern about this new structure and it's only for his use? But we're not just proposing a new structure, we are also proposing elimination of that much and then some. And where this patio is coming out is adjacent to the resource area, which I think is going to be a huge benefit. So the people walking along the beach, on the beach next to it, will now not just see that timber bulkhead and the 3-story building beyond it. There will be a swath of vegetation that will be visible from the public view. So there is some benefit, I believe, to offset this new construction.
It's a mitigation, I forget what the numbers were.
We've got a total of 502 square feet of mitigation.
3.7.
And we have an overall reduction in hardscaping. So I'm having a hard time understanding how you can see reducing hardscaping as a bad thing when we're providing so much mitigation. We're simply
Reducing-
rearranging the hardscape,
It is not a
rearranging
bad
and
thing.
reducing the hardscaping.
Okay, reducing is not a bad, this timber bulkhead, is there, how high is that? I mean, I guess I'm talking about the area that this gentleman is responsible for, or, you know, that's part of his property, that he, how much of it is not visible now to the public, people going by? What? The section on, whichever direction, south, I guess, south, anyway, that's a section of this that you want to reduce. Is there is the sight line for the public's viewing?
I mean, the patio,
Not where you propose to put the oven, but on this side, what,
unfortunately, I don't have any.
oh, here, that's what I'm talking about.
The grade is below the top of the wall in the lawn and patio area.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so it really, until, the only one who would really see any difference would be the person looking out his window. It really wouldn't be seen by people walking around.
But your bylaw, I think, encourages removal of hardscaping, not because of impact on visibility from the public, but for improved water quality, not because how it looks.
But this is below, you're saying this is below the,
I cannot imagine the existing patio is visible from the public view, from the beach or the channel.
so it really wouldn't make a difference, I don't think.
Yet
Okay.
it is still within the buffer and does still impact the resource area by its presence, not because of its visibility, but because of the material and it not being natural vegetation.
Well, I will tell you honestly, from my point of view, that which was allowed to be built X amount of years ago is a simple fact. It is really not a negotiable. It should be part of the bargaining. You are allowed to have it, and if it is so, if you so choose to remove a section of it, that's fine, but not to add something new. Clearly, the bylaw says no new structures within this 50-foot buffer. That's all. I mean, it's very clear.
Unless it can be demonstrated that it will not have an adverse impact on any of the interests in the bylaw, and I don't believe.
We actually
in
voted one down.
aesthetics.
We actually voted one down about a month ago at 2097 Route 28, where I think they were giving away like 5 to 1.
I find it's very,
And
I
I don't
find it
think
very difficult.
aesthetics are an
I don't live
interest.
on the water, and I'm not putting up a similar structure on the water. But I would find it difficult if it's not applied, how come, in my head, a layman's response is, how come they can do it and we can't? I'm not sure this is fairly applied.
Because they're offering an alternative to improve what already exists there legally. And rather than just leaving everything as is, in order to improve their enjoyment of this location. And Mr. Dasco had hoped to be here tonight. There was a little bit of a mix-up, and he, for some reason, thought it was last night, but was unable to attend. But wanted to make clear that he is one of the few condominium owners who does actually spend the summer here, almost 100% of his time here, and does use this patio and does enjoy cooking outside and being outside. He's not just, 2 or 3 weekends a summer. He is here and does use it and does enjoy it. And he's just trying to, he does have a grill. He could get a fire pit and a portable refrigeration unit, and he could have all these things out on his patio and use it. What would happen to them if there was a storm and, floodwaters what kind of property damage would result from all that being on the property, which is completely allowed. Rather than doing that, he would like to have a neatly organized, compact, all in one location.
It's really understandable. I don't argue with that. If I lived there, as I said, I would be perfectly happy to have it myself. I think it would be better for him to have the portable alternatives you were just speaking about. Not acceptable to him as is this high-end pizza oven,
Yeah.
and it's permanent. But everybody else that lives within a 50-foot or this buffer zone has to tolerate less than ideal probabilities, putting in a grill that might be swept away in a gale or something. I'm not sure. I'm just looking at the equality of this bylaw to everybody who lives within, who has to put up with this. The bylaw is for a purpose, which I understand. But therefore, I think it should be for everybody, including, even though this is a fine piece of a proposal, it does not meet the intent of the reason for the bylaw protection. And I know that his is an enclosed piece of property on an artificially created barrier, blah, blah. I know all that, but it's still within the 50 feet, and it's very hard to justify to everybody else who would like to have whatever their proposal is. Say, well, gee, how come this person got this? You can argue for it, but it's not necessary. It's not like it's controlling erosion or it's some positive reason. It's because he wants it. It's an addition for him.
But the impact to the ground and to the resources underneath and adjacent to it are the same, whether it's 48 square feet of brick patio or 48 square feet of a 3-foot tall retaining wall. You're still taking up the square footage of vegetation that otherwise would be there. So again, I'm not seeing the downside of eliminating 225 square feet of patio in one location closer to the resource area and replacing it with 136 square feet of surface adjacent to the building within existing lawn further from the resource area.
It's well stated, John. That's the mitigation. Brad?
Well, I just want to say I appreciate John's line of reasoning here. I think the commission's been very consistent with our interpretation of no new structures. The language does allow variances. I think that's what we're talking about here. And so this is a case where you consider a variance, not for hardship. That's one way that we can consider a variance. I would not say this is a hardship case at all. And many times we have rejected new structures, even if they're modest, because they're adjacent to a functional resource area. In this case, you've got a highly altered resource area tucked in with a bulkhead. And so this might be a case, and I'm really close on this one. It's kind of difficult, but it might be a case where the mitigation is a net improvement that could justify consideration of a variance because the site is so altered to begin with. But I do appreciate where you're coming from on this, John. I think it is consistent with what we've been practicing for some time.
Is there a motion?
Can I ask one question?
Yes, Carol.
Do you think he would be willing to get rid of the pizza oven? That is a vertical structure. We've said that the land has already been altered. but we've also said that it's a very visible situation, and we like to follow our own precedents.
We asked that last time, and Stephanie's saying no.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I asked if it could be reduced, and the height of it, and because of the design, it cannot be
No, you
reduced.
cannot
It's
reduce-
7
no,
feet.
Yeah.
It's 7 feet
Can it be
tall.
eliminated?
I think that's the whole point of what he wants.
Okay.
I mean, I can, as I said, he had hoped to be here tonight, but wasn't able to. If it is of any assistance, if we could continue it for, you have a meeting in 2 weeks, and he would hopefully be able to attend, and
I don't think it's a usage thing. I think it's that we've already set precedents that within the 50. We just told somebody no for a very similar project. That's, that was less than a month ago. 2097 Route 28. Just happened to be one of my clients, so it's fresh in my mind. And that was, they were actually willing to forego 4 or 5 times what you guys are offering. And I'm not trying to get you to offer more, I'm just saying, we've set precedents here.
If I were to make a motion, I would recommend that we would, you sort of mentioned 2 things. One, that he wants to change the existing patio, and in addition to that, construct this oven, kitchen, outdoor kitchen environment. I would tend to be in favor of the change in the patio structure that you've proposed with the corresponding mitigation, and I would deny construction of the proposed outdoor kitchen on that site.
Anyone like a motion to continue this to the next meeting?
Well, can we deny the proposal for a outdoor kitchen tonight, and if they want to come back with a new request for some modification to
We can
that?
do that, they can appeal it.
well, I would rather not have to, not get a denial and then have to appeal it, because that's a very lengthy, expensive process. I would instead request a continuation, and I can go back to my client and once more ask if there's any leeway in reducing in some, area or height or something, if that's acceptable to you. I mean, once you vote on it, it's done, and
Yeah.
there's no more,
Well, that's why we asked you last meeting if he would consider alterations to this kitchen, and you came back and said no. So, I mean, my position is that we owe you a denial at this point,
Right,
if
but there
that's the
was-
way everybody feels.
There was also a request or a suggestion at the last meeting to further reduce the existing patio,
Yeah.
which is what we've come back with. We've reduced the proposed patio, and we've also eliminated more of the existing patio. So that was our response to the various requests from the first meeting. And if that's still not enough for a majority of you, then we will take a closer look at reducing the patio, if you would consider continuing it.
And altering the
Reducing the
structure.
kitchen, I mean.
Yes.
So motion to continue this to the, when is the next
June
meeting?
21st.
June 21st meeting?
Got a motion?
As long as it's not the same exact plan that comes back before us. Because if it's gonna be the same exact plan, then we should vote on it now and move on to other things.
Well, I
can't
don't know if it's,
Yeah.
I mean, if it is the exact plan, then I understand what will probably result.
We did ask for 2 things, and one came back with the reduction in hardscape around the corner, and the pizza oven didn't get removed, so they did fall through for one of the 2 things.
Is that a motion or anything?
Yes.
We continue, need a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, I'll second. Any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor of continuing this to the next meeting on June 21st, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. It's, 5 to 1? We'll continue this to the next meeting. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Okay, the next item, and notice of intent, is the town of Harwich, some dredging. I think that's gonna be postponed. Brad, we need a motion to next meeting.
I move we continue the notice of intent for the town of Harwich to dredge and dispose dredge spoils along beaches of Harwich until the June 21st meeting.
Okay, need a second?
Second.
Okay, is there a reason for that,
Wait
Brad?
Oh, sorry about that.
NHESP has not gotten back with their comments yet.
Okay, that was the reason, okay.
We had a request.
Hmm?
Two things I wanted to talk to you about. Maybe off the record, I can talk to you later or something.
Well,
You gotta say who you are right now so people know.
I'm sorry, I lost my hearing aid yesterday.
Who are you?
You can speak, you can speak, you're invited to speak.
I'm Ralph Kroll from South Chatham, born and brought up here. and-
Come up to the table.
Okay. These are helpful comments, by the way. I'm all in favor of everything.
Thank you.
I'm Ralph Kroll, South Chatham. I was born and brought up in Howardsport, and I ran a crane for 30, 40 years, and I dug out Little Round Cove twice, and then the last time, I guess, the dredge did it. But I just wanted to say a few things that might help you when it's being done. You can't dig too deep there at Little Round Cove because there's peat down there. And there's also several natural springs right there. One of them, as I remember, is 3 to 6 inches around, and it's underwater at low tide. You can stand there and see it bubble up. Maybe you've seen them, I don't know. No. So you have to be careful when you dig that you don't bury those springs. There's at least 2 that I know of, and if it'll help you someday, well, it's a long walk for me, but it's right opposite the rock wall that the McLennans built there. And I think there was mention in the Chronicle that about placing the dredge material high water or low water mark or something. I don't think it's gonna matter too much. It's all going down to Muddy Creek. It won't be long. All that sand's going down. Because all that I put and all that, the dredge put theirs down there anyway, it's headed down there, plus all from Eastwood Hoe. The biggest problem is going to be down at the exit of Muddy Creek. That's built up with thousands and thousands and thousands of sand that's come down over the years. When I was a kid, I used to go crabbing in there, and that sand wasn't there. I think the rising of the sea level has taken the bank out. But in regards to your permits, I would suggest that you get a permit to dredge, maybe with Chatham and Howard. Dredge a channel for the Muddy Creek, because the next big storm from the northwest or the north, that is gonna wash all that sand and where the water's coming out now. I tried to get them to dredge on either side of the new bridge. The new bridge is wonderful, and one of the wheels there said, "Oh, it'll wash itself away." Well, yeah, for a little bit, but the first storm, you're gonna get a lot of sand go in there, and then it's gonna fill right in again. So I would suggest that you include that in your dredging permits, if you can. Maybe you gotta work with the town of Chatham and everything. But I just wanted to make those comments because I knew about them.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
good.
much.
And if it's any help, fine. If it isn't, well, I'm just wasting my emotions. And
We'll have to add
Not
money.
at all, Mr. Cole.
yeah, I wanted to say something about the Marini estate. That used to be owned by my relatives years ago. there was a Solomon Kroll that lived there. He raised, they raised live decoys for the hunting camps in there, because there's a lot of springs up in there too. Perhaps you know it, perhaps you don't. But that place, I haven't seen them, but I heard they were loaded. And that place always kind of kept open during the winter because the water was flowing. And my grandfather and Elmer Kroll, the bird carver, and another fellow named Kenny built 2 dikes. I have the deeds to the dikes. They come down to me. And of course, they probably never will build them again. But they used to trap herring there, and they used to put the boards in to flood the cranberry bogs, which were up in there too. And
Were the dikes for the cranberry bogs or for herring catching?
I believe the dikes were for the cranberry bogs, yeah. But the herring did come up in there too.
It was
And
fresh.
in the wintertime, when it was flooded, it was wonderful fishing, believe it or not, through the ice for big pickerel and perch and everything. But anyway, that's just history lesson.
Any recollection of herring going further on to Mill Pond?
Mill Pond,
Making the
that comes under the road, let's see.
Queen Anne Road, there's a culvert.
Yeah, it comes down through that cranberry, yeah, it comes to Cranberry Bog, goes under Queen Anne, and it comes out in a little pool there. Yeah, the herring used to go up through there. Long haul for them, but they made it.
Wow, now it's too steep, I think. The elevation is
Yeah.
just too
Yeah.
steep to allow it.
We need to add Muddy Creek to the dredging operation.
That would be a new permit because it's not a existing footprint that's been dredged, so that would probably take a new permit.
Yeah, well, I
A
don't
good
know.
idea, but it couldn't be rolled into this permit, I don't think.
Yeah,
I think
but
you're right, though, all that sand's getting pushed in there.
it's gonna be a matter of time, not much, before one good storm is gonna almost plug that river right up. All depends on the tide at the time. If it's a high tide, you've got a backwater that might break it through coming back at low tide. The water that's backed up into Muddy Creek, it might build up enough with the springs, so it might force a little channel through, but it won't be much.
But dredging Muddy Creek might help the water in Muddy Creek.
Flush itself.
Yeah, flush itself.
Mr.
Yeah.
Kroll, have you spoken with the harbor master on this?
No. I tried to, when they had the hearings about building the bridge and doing everything, I was in Florida or somewhere, and I never made them. But I don't think they'd listen to me anyway.
Yes.
The engineers there,
They are.
pardon me, Mr. Chase, you're a native too, aren't you? Yeah, I thought so. West Harwich?
South Harwich.
South Harwich. South Harwich.
My father was West Harwich.
Okay. Oh, God, yes. Well, anyway, for what it's worth, I didn't mind spending the time sitting here. That was
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you for joining us.
Yep,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you for your
Yep.
time.
So if you got any questions sometime, I'll be glad to help.
Okay.
If I'm still alive.
Yes, sure. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Jeffrey King, 30 Lothrop Avenue. Proposed enclosure of a room in the existing cottage and the construction of a new wooden porch on sonotubes with a roof to the existing cottage located at 30 Lothrop Avenue. The existing cottage is located within a 100-year flood zone and within the 50-foot buffer and 100-foot buffer zone of the BVW wetland. Yes, sir, Paul.
Yes, Paul Shea again with Independent Environmental Consultants representing Mr. King. I know this project's got a bunch of history, and my understanding is that, I know there was an enforcement order for this, for the property. I've seen it for the construction of the, you've got an existing cottage here, and you've got the existing house here.
Yep.
My understanding is the cottage was built, I think, in 1989, and Mr. King put on this new porch area on, I believe it's 4 sonotubes. This is an existing lawn area where the porch went in. On this side of the house, this, again, this red line is the 50-foot buffer zone, so like almost all of the cottage is located in the 50-foot buffer zone to the edge of wetlands. This section of the cottage over here, closest to the existing house, there was, I guess, he squared off so that there's a new addition, approximately 200 square feet. by squaring off this section of the cottage, and he didn't have a permit for that. So, basically, the addition of 200 square feet and the porch, which is roughly 272 square feet, are located in the 50-foot buffer zone. If you look at the existing cottage towards the edge of wetlands, this is wetland flag A9 here, and this is wetland flag A8. There's an existing retaining wall below the existing porch. The existing retaining wall was part of the cottage when it was built back in 1989. So the porch, again, it's on sonotubes. He didn't do any alterations to the ground there except for the digging of the sonotubes. Was in existing lawn area, which was disturbed 50-foot buffer zone. And to do it, he didn't have to take down any trees and shrubs. He's basically in the lawn area. The question comes up, he's not any closer to the edge of the wetlands, but obviously he'd like to keep the porch and the addition that's been squared off. Clearly, this needs a variance from the Harwich Conservation Commission. Clearly, this project should have been before you before any work was done in the field. So we filed an after-the-fact notice of intent application before the commission. I'm aware of some of the legal actions in the background. I actually asked my client, I'd like to go talk with the commission myself so that we don't have a bunch of lawyers in the room tonight, and everyone seemed to think that was a good idea. So, couple of things. I did have talked with Amy about this, Izowski, about this project. Before we submitted the notice of intent application, I believe she brought before you this plan, which is just a planting plan we had done for the project. Before the applicant had agreed to finally file the notice of intent application, this is actually part of the notice of intent filing, was to propose to do, you've got an edge of wetlands right next to the existing cottage, and the wetland at this point in here is a fringe bordering vegetated wetland. It's a wooded swamp. Approximately 30, well, probably 40 feet from flag A9, you end up coming into a salt marsh, which is pretty much dominated by Phragmites right now, invasive Phragmites. The salt marsh is about 40, 45 feet from the cottage. The edge of wetlands is approximately 8 or 9 feet from the edge of the wetlands, and again from the retaining wall. And we had proposed as part of the planting plan was there are open areas within the actual bordering vegetated wetland to propose to do, we had proposed high bush blueberry, bayberry, sweet pepper bush, and northern arrowwood shrubs to be planted within that zone. That technically is part of this filing. There are other areas of mitigation that could be done here. This existing stone driveway area here could be taken out and restored back to plantings, which would be part of the 50-foot buffer zone. So when I first talked with Amy, I said, we have an opportunity to try to propose some plantings in the actual biological wetlands, even though he technically hasn't altered that. He's altered the 50-foot buffer zone. And she said, well, let's start with that. But there's other room for mitigation here. Clearly, we're asking for a variance from the commission to keep the porch area and, the addition that's on the back side of the house away from it. I'll take any questions that you want. I know this is a rather sensitive subject, but I thought it was best to just have myself come in tonight and not attorneys, so. I'm here friendly, so. Anyways, we have the porch area. It does have obviously a roof on it, but the amount of impervious runoff coming off that extent of roof is basically, it's so insignificant, it'd be no impact. One other thing is that the existing cottage right now has an oil tank in the basement, And part of the mitigation would be to take the oil tank out of there, because he's putting propane gas to service both the house and the cottage. We can get that tank out of there because that's holding oil in the 50-foot buffer zone to the resource areas. The flood zone within this property is elevation 11, so both the cottage and the house are within that flood zone. So we're in basically 100-year flood zone. We're in the 50-foot buffer zone to the bordering vegetated wetland for both the porch area and the room that was closed in the addition room on this side of the project.
Thank you, Paul. Nikki, you have any comments?
Just Amy noticed a couple of things that the application is missing that would probably warrant a continuance. Just that under the Harwich bylaw, the after the fact notice of intent is a double fee. So we only received the normal.
I think we did double the fee. Oh, you mean for the bylaw portion? Because,
Yes, so like under Harwich, we have our own set of
Okay.
fees, and that one needs to be doubled as well.
okay, that's fine.
The recording information was left off of the NOI, so the book and page or certificate or whatever it is.
We can get that, yeah.
And then, again, just the wetland delineation field data sheets.
Okay.
So she wanted all those before
Okay.
it passed, at least under the Harwich bylaw.
Okay.
Thank you, Nikki. Carol, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I think I would prefer to, I'm pulling a blank.
Yeah, it's a complicated one.
I would prefer to wait till our next meeting to discuss
Okay. Bob,
with a completed application.
any questions, Sean?
Just a comment that I'm still completely against this. That's all.
Ernie?
I have no comments.
John?
It's just a question. The point of contention is this existing cottage, because it's, I don't know, looks like 85, 90% of it's on the other side, within the 50-foot.
Correct.
Okay, and this is where a lot of the additions have been put on, and certainly is, there are no permits. Just wondering, if there's a passage, there's a, I don't know what you call it, a passageway or a deck that goes between the main house
To the cottage.
and the cottage.
Mhm.
And there's a little, and in this map here, right, okay, it shows a pair of,
Connects.
the corner of the cottage, that it's at that point. If that whole building were turned around, using that as the pivot point, it would be outside the 50-foot zone. Has there been any consideration of having the thing moved?
I haven't heard that.
I just,
Okay.
Okay.
That'd be new to me.
Oh, okay.
I know when I first got involved, the first thing I saw was, I'm kind of surprised the porch didn't go on this side, toward the wetlands, towards getting views of over the wetland area. But he didn't, he put it, over the lawn area. So that was one saving part for me, that, okay, at least we're not any closer to the resource area. Obviously, we can't move the wetland away, but there is plenty of room to put more plantings in here, buffer zone wise. I don't know if plantings will solve the problem, but there's plenty more room for mitigation than what we've offered as a starting point so far.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions, Sean?
No, I just wondered if it's not uncommon to have buildings moved, expensive, I'm sure.
Mhm.
But I was just wondering if that had been part of the equation,
Okay,
that they would simply put it on and move
Brad?
it.
I can ask, but I haven't heard it yet.
Just a brief comment that the commission did impose fines for the work conducted without a permit, and
Yep.
those fines have not been paid. So I'd just like to express my feeling that I don't appreciate that situation at all. Just go on the
Thank
record.
you. Okay, I need a motion to continue this to the next meeting until the application is complete.
I move that we continue the notice of intent for 30 Rockland Avenue until the next hearing.
I'll second.
Did you second it? Carolyn, okay. Any discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor of continuing this to the next meeting, to June 21st, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, got one opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Another one we can't get rid of,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah. The,
Yes.
we have 2 extension requests. Nikki, you want to comment on either of those?
We can do Old Mill Point first. They want a 3-year extension to maintain their beach raking, once a week to remove codium that accumulates there. And then, they use use that raking material as sacrificial material during winter storms to help prevent further erosion. Amy did recommend extending this with the stipulation that they stop using sandbags. If any of you were out to the site, they have giant plastic bags full of sand that were kind of an old erosion control method that is really just meant for, you know, just like sandbags would be used in flooding in the Midwest.
Emergency.
It's an emergency.
Right.
And they have used it as kind of like trying to do a quarter envelope type thing. And they are degrading a little bit, and the plastic is not decomposable. So, so any sandbags that come unburied, to cut the plastic out, leave the sand there, but at least cut the plastic and get it off the beach. But that was from an old permit, so that can be, and it was an expired permit, so they shouldn't be really working on that anymore anyway. And they have agreed to come meet with Amy to discuss better erosion control options. So with having discussed those issues, she thought that the beach raking itself was okay to continue.
Okay, need a motion?
Well, let's have some discussion.
Okay, discussion?
The applicant is here as well. One thing I had hoped to see for this permit was annual reports, and we did discuss that in pretty significant detail when this first came along. And I think what we received is one annual report, and then we received a shellfish and vegetation survey.
Actually, there's been more than one annual report sent in. I think every year we have reported the amount of material that we moved. I think every year we have provided a schedule of cleanings
Right.
in advance. We have monitored the cleaning to comply with the weather limit. At the conclusion of every year, we provided a report, a simple report, that showed how much material we had moved. And we did call in that group, Matthew Creighton's group,
Right.
to run a study one time, and we've been waiting for the second time to coordinate it with Red River Beach, because they had the same thing. And so when I contacted everybody in approximately January of this year, maybe it was December last year, but in the winter, we said, look, let's do that, just tell us when, and we'll do it. And the notion was that it would be done in conjunction with Red River Beach. So we're prepared to do that at any time. But I would say that with that exception, that we've complied with everything that I know of or can think of in the order.
I know we asked for weekly, it was pretty simple. You and I went over this in detail in a hearing.
Yeah.
We were looking for weekly reporting of material, amount and material, and then the destination of it. You know, did it all go to the dune, photographs? So I haven't seen that. I think you have submitted information to Amy, but I really haven't seen the annual report that was in the order of conditions.
Well, the weekly, my understanding was that the reporting, that it wasn't a weekly reporting, that it was an annual reporting in terms of the volume moved.
Right, but the accounting would occur weekly, like a line item, and then you'd submit it by a certain date. That was in the order of conditions, so I don't want to belabor this because you need to clean your beach. You need an extension, I believe. But what I think should happen is we should have not a 3-year extension, but a shorter period, so we can figure out how to deal with erosion control in lieu of the sandbags that have been there, and then also catch up on the annual reporting.
Well, I think that the erosion control is outside the scheme of this cleaning. I mean, that basically was our mistake. What we had there was wrong. We didn't realize it had expired and that it wasn't. So that's a different order. The order that we're talking about here is really the cleaning. And I guess I'd like to make sure, because I still don't understand, in terms of weekly, I don't recall, and I don't know that it's documented, that we were going to weekly provide you with that we move this many tons or whatever it was,
Yeah,
yards.
you'd just submit it once a year.
Right.
But it would have weekly line items of the activity that occurred. And I think if we go to the order of conditions, which we probably should have it before us, we'll see what was required. And that's what's required of you, is what's in the order of conditions. But I do recall you and I had some significant discussions on documenting the activity. And the reason is because they're leaving the material on site. In most cases around the town, they're taking it off-site. And so they're putting the material on the dune
No.
to
We're putting it, well, and you say on the dune, maybe,
seaward of the dune. You're building up that
Yeah.
front of the dune.
but we're keeping it below the dune.
Right, and the key was most places you want them to take it off site because it can start to smother natural vegetation or natural resource areas. In this case, it was easier to do it, and there was a need for erosion control as well. It was gonna contribute to that need as well. So I think the commission really wanted to have the means to evaluate what happened. And so that's why I feel that, that I don't think we got what we asked for in terms of an annual reporting. And I know Amy sent around some documents. The shellfish survey and the vegetation plan was one thing, the survey, excuse me. But the annual reporting, I really haven't seen, I think, what we asked for. I don't want to penalize you because you have to do this work. You've got to clean your beach. So I would propose that we do have an extension, but I'd like to hear some thoughts on a shorter duration with some conditions to shore up the annual reporting to what I thought we expected the last time.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
So, Brett,
I'll be glad to, comply with what you'd requested. I'm just saying that I thought that we did. I think Amy thought that we had done what was requested of us. I might be wrong.
I haven't seen.
I don't know
Yeah,
where she's coming from on it, but I know that I thought, now, if you want us to every week say, look, we were down there for 3 hours, we did this, and send a note in, or at the end of the year, summarize it that way, I'll be more than happy to do that.
I think that's what the commission voted on last time, to have an annual submittal with a certain date that had, and we've been doing this for other beach cleaning as well. We want to get a handle on this codium problem, we want to get a handle on on-site storage and as opposed to off-site removal. If you take it off-site, then there's no potential impact to the resource area. So I feel like there was a lot of discussion on this point, and I don't think I've seen what we asked for. I don't want to hold you up, but I think we should, for an extension, we should get it right.
Let me ask you, can this be extended again after this? Or is this something that can be, or can you only get one extension? I guess my point is, if you're saying that it's you don't want to penalize us, but you're extending us 2 years instead of 3 years, or whatever, and we can't renew it, then it is a penalty.
I think the activity has to continue. I think you, unfortunately, have to do this work, into the future. So I don't think you're not going to get an extension. Between the sandbags on the site and what I feel is not receiving the annual reports that we requested, I think there's something that has to be shored up here. And so I think for the sandbags, you're going to have to file another notice of intent.
Oh, I understand we have to clean up the sandbags, and we can't put any down, or anything else down, until we have a scheme that you have looked at and approved. But as I say, that's a separate thing, and I guess I don't want
but it contributes to the monitoring question that you have.
It's the same habitat, it's the same location. where the sandbags are is where the toe is gonna be built up with the codium. So it is the same location, the erosion control is the same interest. And what I'm worried about is that I'm the only person that remembers this discussion of 4 years ago. And so as people turn over, I go off and do something else, is this gonna just happen again? I don't wanna create a problem for you. I think you need to maintain your beach. And so I just would like to really document what we're looking for.
Would you consider saying, because I'm just looking at, you know, the whatever it is, to come back sooner rather than later, at putting the extension in, but saying it's dependent upon, and it can be revoked if we don't report the way you want us to report weekly. And I'll be glad to, I truly had, I don't recall, and that's a misunderstanding, where you said you wanted it weekly. Because we very clearly, I mean, I could have done
You
this.
want me to read the exact condition?
If you have the order, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
A post-season report shall be submitted to the Conservation Commission, which shall include pre- and post-season biota surveys, data and photos, as well as the weekly logs from the operator detailing the percent composition of the material
Yes, you're right.
removed
Yeah.
and an estimate of total amount removed. And it looks like we got one from Lynn Hamlin in January of 15, so after the first year you did it.
Okay.
And then we got looks like the biota survey portion in February of 2016, but neither one consistently every year.
And there was, basically, the other 2 years, I just copied Lynn's format and filled in the blanks and sent it in.
Okay.
So that was on an annual basis. Now, it wasn't done weekly, that says do it weekly. Or recorded as how it was
Record
done
it
weekly.
weekly, but submit
Yeah.
it at the end of every season.
You know, it just wasn't apparent to me
Yeah.
that it was supposed to be listed weekly. That's all I'm saying.
Right, and we didn't get an annual report. I think
Wait a minute.
one year we did.
No.
And the other years, we had emails that you sent to Amy, and that's not
Right.
the same. That's not what we requested.
I guess I didn't understand the proper format. I thought it was just a matter of communicating the information, and, I mean, if you don't want me to send an email, I can send a certified letter or
Well,
have
I
a
think-
lawyer
I
or
think it
somebody.
would just follow the order of conditions
would
with an annual report, and I feel that, you know, there was a lot of discussion. It was a different practice to put the cleanings on the toe of the slope of a natural dune. So it was a different practice, and we wanted to help you out to see how it worked. And so, it seems like it didn't work great because the material was removed and you had to use sandbags. So that's the type of feedback I think the commission wants, is, you know, is that a good practice? I think you're locked into some type of maintenance there, and we're gonna allow you to do maintenance there. You need to. But we wanna help you do something that's gonna be a little more long-lasting if possible. And I think, these annual reports, I take them pretty seriously. I think we need that information coming back.
Would you be for removing the material that's raked up?
I think that can be handled separately. I think he needs to do some beach cleaning like in a few weeks, right?
June 10th is our first.
Yeah, so I think we should extend them tonight, I feel. And the question is, do you have a more brief extension period, or just the language he's suggesting? And whatever you folks, you know.
You need a motion.
Can we approve a 3-year extension that would be withdrawn if annual reports are not provided in the proper format?
I think that's reasonable. I guess my point here, I'm kind of going on the same ground, I guess, but, you know, we're back here after really 4 years, and we don't have a lot, the commission doesn't have a lot of information on what happened. And we really discussed this one quite a bit.
I can dig through and find, I think I can, find the emails I sent. But I don't have, nor did I think I had to have, how much it was done by week. So I just don't have it.
Yeah. You have a contractor, right? Bring
Yes.
a machine down there?
Yeah. I can show you how many hours he worked every week
Right.
and how much he billed us.
Yeah, and we've talked to some of the other contractors, and they understand that it's a common issue. This codium is just piling up on our beaches. It's a big problem that didn't exist 40 years ago.
Well, you know, it's a very interesting point, you know, how's it work and did it wash out and what it do? It actually did protect the dune. Because as we built up that codium, you know, when you pick this stuff up, it's codium that tracks sand, it tracks shells, it tracks all kinds of stuff. So you end up with some sand, shells, and codium. You move it up there, and the smell is eliminated when you move it out of the water, first of all. So that objective is accomplished. The next thing is it sits there, not on the dune, but on sand. Not over the dune. There's no seaweed that it covers up or any growth at all. What has occurred along our beach is that some growth, now it's rather scrubby, it's not pretty seagrass, but some growth has built up on this, and in some cases, it's been retained. In other cases, to your point, you know, when the tide comes in and we have a bad storm, it's basically washed this stuff out. It's washed it someplace, it's not up, it's out. And I think that to the extent that it protected the dune, obviously you still erosion, but what eroded was the seaweed and the codium and the material is there. Because if you go to, you know, because it happens a lot, not a lot, but every once in a while, you go back to where there's no, you know, you put all the seaweed there for, you know, 4 or 5 weeks, then you get a bad storm, and all the seaweed's gone. But the bank itself, the dune itself, is about where it was. So it does work in protecting the dune.
You could put that in the annual report.
That's the feedback we're looking for. That's positive. And so.
But again, it wasn't clear what you wanted. It should have been, I agree. I understand when she reads it back, that you wanted it, I guess what you want to do on an annual basis, for me to say we did it for 3 hours on June 15th, and we picked up and moved X amount of material.
It could be a line item, weekly summary, and then looking for photographs at the end of the season on how that dune looks. Trying to get at the question of what you're describing, that there's some protection, and that it's not, if you were to build this up so high, you'd eventually, it could go over and cover existing beach grass, natural beach grass there.
No.
That was a concern the commission had.
And that has not happened, because the 2 places we put it is against, where those sandbags are, is, what was it, 20, 30 feet? You know, up. It's not gonna go over that.
Right.
Now, we did put it down
Further to the west, yes.
further east.
It was also some building.
Oh, yeah, further west,
Yeah.
but again, it's not even close to the top. There's no way it would build, that was one thing we did meticulously. The operator was very much aware of the fact that he could not put it so it would go over the existing dune.
Yeah.
And yes, there are places, the bulk of it went, you know, in front of a 30-foot dune. A lot of it, you know, some of it went down into these lower dunes, but it had the same principle. And that is, you would not put it where it would exceed the top of that dune. And that's both east and west of there. So I think that we, in spirit, we complied with this order. I think also that we accomplished our objectives, both in cleaning the beach, getting rid of the smell, improving the quality of the water, and basically supporting and improving the dune. Okay? And those were the principal objectives.
Right.
So, I mean, I'll be glad to do this, but, and I didn't comply exactly the way it was described. I'll acknowledge that.
Well, it's not so
But-
much compliance, it's, I think the commission wants to learn from your practices. We have a real problem on our beaches with codium and this type of management, and so we want to learn. It's the one site we're letting it build up, so I think it's not so much just busting your chops over compliance. I think we want to learn from this.
And I'll be glad, but it looks like busting my chops.
Well, for me, it's kind of an important topic.
No,
And
I agree, it's important to me,
And you and I
too.
talked about this very much, so.
Yeah, so that's why I say, I have no problem in going forward. Just like look at, on those bags, they had it expired. I have no problem in cleaning that up, just as described, by Amy, getting it done. My mistake, and we're gonna work to figure out another way to solve erosion. But if we do, we probably aren't gonna tell you, we're gonna sell it to somebody, and make a fortune, because I can't imagine there's a good way to do it. But that's fine. But we won't use bags again, we clean that up, and I have no problem with that.
Well, I look forward to working with you to come up with some natural solutions for that dune and get some fiber material, and to try to see if we can help you out there, because I think it's a site that could really use that
Yeah.
type of approach, so.
Okay, we've got a motion to extend this for 3 more years. Carolyn, you seconded it, did you?
I don't think we have a motion
We
yet.
don't have a motion.
I'll move that we extend the beach cleaning permit for Old Mill Point Association for 3 years as requested, with the condition that the extension can be shortened if annual report compliance does not occur.
Okay,
And I'd also like to have the commission review the orders and see that they're sufficient for what we need. And so I would say that when we go to sign the order conditions, that we all review those and make sure everything's up to snuff.
okay, we have a motion, need a second.
Great motion.
A second from Ernie, any further discussion?
I mean, if they're not following through with the reporting, then why wouldn't it be revoked?
Well, I think,
It's like we're playing mall security cop here. I'll stop or I'll yell stop again.
well, we've talked about this, and we've talked about having shorter duration extensions
Right.
if we feel like we need to. And that's why I put that on the table, to have a 1 or 2 year. But I do think that the proponent has worked with Amy very well, and I think it's a site that there's some things that can be done to improve it. And so they have to have this type of maintenance, so I don't want them to stop doing the maintenance. So I don't mind the 3-year extension with some language that clarifies annual reporting and some effort by us to tighten up those conditions.
It seems to me in this situation, not in a lot of them, but in this situation, 1, 2, and 3 years of reporting would be more valuable than a single report.
Yeah, good point.
I'm sorry, 1, 2, and 3 years?
No, 3 years of, I would favor, in this case, a 3-year extension, because I'd like to see 3 years of reports.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to extend this 3 years, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With all those conditions.
Okay, the next extension request is Ayer Lane Property Association.
They are looking to extend their order of conditions for beach raking and nourishment with sand, but they only ask to do this once a year. And they often use town dredged material, or they are allowed to get 100 cubic yards of clean beach sand to put down in the event of an emergency. But again, they only do it for once a year, each year, asking for a 3-year extension, and Amy did see that that was an appropriate request.
Okay, any questions from the commissioners?
No?
Okay, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to extend the Air Lane Property Owners Association request for beach maintenance once a year.
For how many years?
They would, they are requesting a 3-year extension.
For 3 years.
3 years, okay, need a second?
Second.
and a second. All in favor of extending AR property owners 3 years, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, we got those, and we got certificates of compliance. And the first certificate of compliance was Randall, John and Charlotte Randall, 1 Squash Meadow Road.
No, first one's Lloyd, isn't it?
Amy and I did a site visit, and the plantings are in good condition. They've been in longer than a year, and we recommend issuing a certificate of compliance. And there was a few deviations from the plan, but they were actually reducing some of the decking and stuff like that, so they worked out in our favor.
Wasn't that the first one?
I can't see.
They just flipped on the agenda,
Oh, okay.
they reversed them.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry.
So we need a motion to approve that certificate of compliance for 1 Squash Meadow Road.
I make a motion to approve the certificate of compliance for 1 Squash Meadow Road.
Now, second, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, the next one is Long Pond Road, 456 Long Pond Road, Graham and Joan Lloyd.
That one, we are recommending a certificate of compliance as well. I went out and there was a few plants that were having, actually a chunk of plants that looked like they were having some issues, but we went back out a few weeks later and they had started sprouting leaves. There are 2 that probably aren't gonna make it, but they had already ordered some replacements. Otherwise, the rest are doing good and everything is in compliance.
Okay, I need a motion to approve that.
Yeah, I'll have all these are signed.
Make a motion to approve the certificate of compliance for 456 Long Pond Drive.
Just a second.
I'll
Second,
second.
Let's got 2 seconds. All in favor, you get, which second did you get here?
tie for second over here.
Okay,
It's a tough crowd.
okay. 456 Long Pond Road indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay,
I keep finishing second.
yep.
Close, though.
That was less than 15 votes on that one.
It's tough.
That was a shame.
Okay, and we got orders and conditions. First one is Donald Eldridge, Natty North Road.
Did you guys receive that?
No.
The language for that had some specific, oh, there it is, yeah, here it is. I just wanted to make sure that language on what to do if the property issues change.
If you tell me what condition number it is and stuff, I can edit it on here, and then you guys can still sign, and we can still keep it moving.
It's 32, 22, 39. SE 32, 22, 39.
Is that the farm?
Natty North Road.
Yes.
Oh, no, that's a different one, that's not the farm.
Did you
I
find it
haven't-
on the computer?
I don't have any comments on Naughty North.
Oh, yeah, I have the file, but if there's any actual amendments to the specific number condition number 1, for
Right,
instance, just
okay,
let me
okay.
know which one it is.
And we sort of checked the amended special conditions, all the special conditions and the amended special conditions.
Yes, this was a request for amended order, so an order's already out, and they're just requesting to
Right.
amend.
Right. Need a motion for 90 North Road.
Have Everyone ready on that one, or still checking it out?
Okay,
I move we accept the order of conditions for 90 North Road.
can you get a second?
I'll second.
Got a second from Carolyn, I'll indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, motion carries. The next order of conditions is Cranberry Valley Golf Course, new car barn.
I think even since Amy's seen, NHESP came back and said that, or no, the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife came back and said that they want more information. So, because it's in box turtle habitat,
This is the golf course?
yes.
Oh my God. You
It's
gotta be kidding.
It's next to,
That is ridiculous.
it's next
Did we
to,
rule on this before we had their letter back? Is that what we did?
I think so. The letter I have is dated June 2nd, so I don't think
So-
Amy's even seen it.
So we should have waited, even though,
Most likely, they're only gonna have maybe a time of year condition or a make fencing that turtles can get through.
right,
so we'll
Probably wanna
continue
move
this one then.
okay, we can just
She said
sit on it.
expire today.
I have no comments on the third, the Belmont.
Golf course.
Belmont Condo Trust.
That's a typo. Yeah. You might want to change that.
I will. Oh, it's changed on here.
Belmont
Oh,
Condo
okay.
Trust.
This has the same annual reporting requirement in it?
Yeah.
Which, the Belmont?
Yeah,
Let's take a look.
number 7 on the last page.
Yeah, number 6.
6 and 7.
Yeah, we have been asking for percent composition. You know, we don't want someone out there trying to measure stuff, but just, you know, what is the bulk of the problem? Is it codium? Is it another plant? Is it shell?
Nikki, did you have things for us to sign?
Yes, I have a whole stack.
Go ahead and start passing them down.
This has even more detail on it. E6E, the distance of the tow on-site material pile to the
Yeah.
average mean high water. That's kind of important.
Yeah.
I hope we can roll up our sleeves when we have the conditions for the extension at Old Mill Point, because I think it's time to be explicit.
What's
It'd
this?
be interesting to have,
Okay.
once we get those in.
Yeah. Actually, this number 6 would be really good for Old Mill Point.
Yeah, that, it sounds.
Yeah. The order of conditions for Belmont,
Mhm.
put number 6 in the order of conditions for Old Mill Point.
I'll have to talk to Amy about that one, just administratively, I don't know, since it's an extension, not an amendment of the order
Good point.
of conditions, I don't know how that will work, so,
We talked about it
Well, you
tonight.
might be able to just send him a copy of those wordings so
Okay.
that he knows exactly.
so that was, or, condition number 6 from Belmont should
6
be
and
applied to Old
7.
Mill Point.
Need a good blueprint for that one. It's just automatic.
Yeah.
There you go. This is what
Yeah.
the protocol. It's 2017. How has this skipped us for the last 100 years?
This is a good one. I can't sign this one. That's mine.
That's a good one. So he said.
I'm sure you all sign that.
So were we good with the Belmont order?
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks good.
Yes.
We have to officially
Yeah, I think we haven't voted yet.
make that right.
Do we need a motion?
I move we approve the Belmont Condo Trust order of conditions for beach cleaning.
Need a second?
Second.
A second, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye, anyone opposed? No, motion carries. Next item is the minutes of May 17th.
Yeah. Nikki, I had a comment on page 2, the last line. Said he asked about taxes on the property. And then it says, he said there was no proof of taxes having been paid. My recollection is that Eldridge said that he tried to pay the taxes, but he wasn't allowed to because the court case hadn't been, or the ownership hadn't been addressed or resolved or whatever.
That's correct.
Okay. Which line was that?
Last line on the
Last
page 2.
Okay. Tried to pay.
And then on page 3, right above the order of conditions and amended order of conditions in the middle of the page, we also ask that he submit evidence that he's filed a plan confirming that the land is in agricultural use. Only changes to that. Mark, coming at you.
All right.
It was interesting to hear Mr. Kroll's science theory behind the sand being pushed in there. Because really, when you think about it, if his theory is right, the whole notion that the sewering of East Harwich, their whole plan is completely off the table as far as the science of it being right. If that does clog itself up, then their reliance on Muddy Creek to flush itself out is not gonna happen.
Right.
So they really should have had a dredging plan as part of the original plan.
I'm not so sure the sand isn't moving out and towards Round Cove. It
It's
seems,
coming from the golf course, from that, you can see that all eroding, that's why they had to fix all that up.
I'm not positive what's happening there. But the idea of how many homes you're gonna be able to save sewering is pretty speculative. You know, so it's a big question mark.
So we
Need a
start with
motion to approve the
230.
minutes?
He used to operate those cranes to dredge and build jetties, and they would go out on the edge of they'd drive out in the jetties and put stones in the end. They'd back up, he'd have the crane on the jetties. It's amazing what they used to do.
Or OSHA.
Yeah, yeah.
Need a motion to approve the minutes of May 17th?
Will be approved the minutes of May 17th changes.
Second?
Second?
Second, all in favor of the minutes of May 17th, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, no, motion carries.
I had to abstain in that, by the
Yeah,
way,
you
because I
abstained.
wasn't here.
Pass these down to Nikki, I signed them.
I would love to.
Okay. And there's a note here to go into executive session.
First, did we want to have a discussion about
Right,
Bell's
thank
Neck
you.
Cranberry bogs?
Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you want, I can lead that briefly.
okay,
I think it's been recommended that we flood the bog. It is a bog that has been leased. It's Conservation Commission property, so we're responsible to manage that. We had, I think, a 10-year lease that the Cranberry Bog owner backed out of, and so we're coming up with a decision on what to do next. And I don't think we're there yet because we need to get more information on the possible activities that could happen. And so it's been recommended to Amy to flood it in the interim to protect the plants, to reduce insects. And so I think we should do that, but I do think that we probably should discuss it, have a vote on the activity, and then just look forward to what we want to do with that property. I think tonight's probably not the time to really discuss in detail the options, because we were going to ask BSC Group to prepare a document for us that had options. But I think it is something that's been sensitive in different parts of town, conservation bogs, so I just wanted to have a little discussion on it. I think I agree with Amy in the recommendation to go ahead and flood it, as long as we put a net in at the confluence to the Herring River Reservoir to keep herring from going down to the bogs. And I think a net has been purchased, and it's ready to go.
you'd like to make a motion?
Well, I will, but I just want to give people a chance to.
Go ahead and make a motion, we'll see it gets seconded, and we'll discuss it.
Okay, that's a good way to go. I move that the Conservation Commission approve the flooding of the Bell's Neck Bog from the second week of June for approximately 1 month to protect the plants, and to do so as a one-time activity with the understanding that the commission needs to consider what will become of the bog as the lease has been, I guess, expired.
Put a net up.
So I think, the one item is to approve the flooding, the second item is to have a future discussion on what to do with it.
Yeah. Okay, we need a second, so we can talk about it.
I'll second it.
Okay, got a second, we need discussion, motion. If not, all in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed, no, and we'll keep it on the agenda for future plans for the bog. Thank you. We need to go into executive session to review the executive session minutes of last meeting.
So we need to vote to end the public hearing, go to executive
Right.
session, and not come back for the public hearing, because we're done.
Right,
So all three of those things just need to be included in the motion.
okay. Okay, we have a motion to go into executive session.
Used to the sufficiency,
Everyone
I know.
thinks go into executive session,
Make a motion that we go into executive session,
okay?
Close the hearing.
Close the hearing,
close the hearing and go into executive session.
okay?
Second?
Second, okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay. Okay,
Aye, Carolyn O'Leary.
I, Robert Mador.
aye, Walter Diggs.
Irish Crabtree.
John Rosetti.
Aye, Brad Chase.
Okay, here are the minutes, executive